Marcus didn't even wait until the dirt had settled on James Richardson's grave. Standing at the cemetery gates, umbrella in hand, phone pressed to his ear, Maya's husband of 7 years looked at his 6 months pregnant wife, soaked to the bone, still holding a single white lily over her father's coffin, and said 4 words that stopped the rain from mattering at all. "I want a divorce." Then he smiled, actually smiled, and walked toward a black car where a woman in red lipstick was already waiting. If you've ever been betrayed by someone you trusted with your whole heart, stay with me. Drop your city in the comments. Let me see how far this story travels. And please subscribe, because what happens next will change everything you think you know about justice. The morning of James Richardson's funeral, Maya woke up at 4 a.m. and couldn't remember how to cry anymore. She had been crying for 3 days straight since the hospital called, since she drove herself to the emergency room alone because Marcus said he had a work dinner he couldn't cancel, since she sat in a plastic chair under fluorescent lights and watched a nurse's face shift into that particular expression that means there is no good news coming. She had cried in the parking garage on her knees. She had cried in the bathtub until the water turned cold. She had cried so much that her body simply ran out of something, and now at 4 a.m, 8 hours before she would stand at a graveside and say goodbye to the only person in the world who had ever loved her without conditions, Maya Richardson sat on the edge of her bed and felt something strange replace the tears. She felt still. Not at peace, not numb. Still the way the air gets still before a tornado. She pressed one hand to her stomach. 6 months along. The baby kicked once, sharp and insistent, like a small fist knocking on a door. "I know," Maya whispered. "I know, baby. We've got to get through today." Marcus was asleep in the guest room. He had moved there 2 weeks ago, claiming he needed space because Maya's emotional state was affecting his sleep. She had not argued. There was a part of her, a small, cold, observant part, that her father had always called her quiet eye, that had already begun to understand things she was not yet ready to say out loud. She got up. She dressed herself carefully in the black dress her father had always said made her look like a woman who meant business. She put on the small gold earrings he had given her for her 30th birthday. She made coffee. She sat at the kitchen table with her hands wrapped around the mug, and she waited for the day to begin. Marcus appeared at 7:15 already in his suit, already looking at his phone. "You eat something," he said without looking up. "Coffee." "You should eat. For the baby." He typed something, scrolled, typed again. "I told the Hendersons we'd sit with them at the reception." Maya looked at him. "The Hendersons weren't close to my father." "No, but they're important people, Maya. It's called networking. Life doesn't stop because—" He caught himself, put the phone down, arranged his face into something approximating sympathy. "I just mean we have to keep moving forward." She didn't answer. She looked at him for a long moment, his handsome face, his careful suit, the way he was already somewhere else, and that quiet, cold part of her took a photograph of this moment and filed it away. "Right," she said. "We should go." The church was full. That surprised Marcus, she could tell. He had never fully understood her father. To Marcus, James Richardson was an embarrassment, a janitor, a man with rough hands and an old car and a 2-bedroom apartment in a part of the city that Marcus never visited without visibly bracing himself. Marcus had married Maya because she was brilliant and beautiful, and because he believed that a woman that polished must come from money somewhere down the line. When he discovered that she didn't, that her father cleaned office buildings for a living and was proud of it, something in Marcus had quietly, permanently closed. But the church was full. There were people Maya didn't recognize, men in quiet, expensive suits sitting in the back rows, women with a kind of understated elegance that doesn't announce itself. There were people her father's age, former colleagues, neighbors, the owner of the small bookshop on Clemson Street, who pressed Maya's hand and whispered, "Your father was the most extraordinary man I ever met." There was Father Dominic, who had known James Richardson for 40 years and stood at the pulpit with tears running freely down his face. "James never let anyone make him feel small," Father Dominic said, "and he never made anyone else feel small either. In a world that constantly tries to rank us, to assign us value based on what we earn or what we own or who we know, James Richardson simply refused to play that game. He knew who he was, And knowing who you are truly knowing is the rarest form of wealth there is. Maya sat in the front pew and felt her father's presence so acutely she almost turned to look for him. Marcus sat beside her, typing under his coat lapel where he thought she couldn't see. At the graveside, the rain came. It came the way grief comes, sometimes all at once without warning. No gradual buildup, just suddenly there and everywhere and soaking everything through. Most people opened umbrellas or retreated to the canopy. Maya stood in it. She couldn't explain why. She just needed to feel something real, and the rain was real, and her father's dark wood casket being lowered into dark earth was real, and the white lily in her hand that she'd brought because it was his favorite was real. The baby kicked again, harder this time. "I've got you," she said very quietly to both of them, to her daughter and to her father, to the one she was losing and the one she was about to bring into the world. "I've got you." She didn't know, standing there in the rain, that Marcus was already 30 feet away. She didn't know he had his phone out. She didn't know the text he was sending said, "Done at 2, hotel at 3, tell her to be ready." She didn't know any of that yet. She was just a daughter in the rain saying goodbye. The moment came at the cemetery gates. Most people had gone. The Richardson side, which was just Maya, because she had no one else, had dwindled to her. And the funeral director's assistant, a young woman named Keisha, who had been quietly, professionally kind all day, and who now pressed a business card into Maya's hand and said, "My personal number is on the back. You call me if you need anything. I mean it." Maya thanked her, turned toward the parking lot, and found Marcus standing there with his umbrella dry and composed phone at his side. "We need to talk," he said. Maya looked at him. Her quiet eye was already open, already watching. "Okay," she said. "I think you know this hasn't been working for a while." She waited. "I've tried, Maya. I've really tried. But we want different things. We're in different places. And I think it's better for both of us if we're honest." She waited. "I want a divorce." Later, she would not be able to explain the thing that happened inside her when he said those words. It wasn't shock exactly. It was more like watching a crack appear in a wall you'd been staring at for years and thinking, there it is. There's the crack I always knew was there. "You're asking me for a divorce," she said slowly, "at my father's grave." "I know the timing isn't." "At my father's grave, Marcus. While I'm standing here holding his funeral lily. While I'm 6 months pregnant with your daughter." He had the decency to look down for about 2 seconds. It was never going to be a good time. "No," she said. Her voice was very steady. That surprised her. "I suppose it wasn't. I'll have my lawyer contact yours. I think we can keep this civil." He reached into his jacket, pulled out an envelope, held it out to her. "I had some papers prepared. The prenup is clear, so it should be straightforward." She stared at the envelope, the same hand that was still holding her father's lily. "Get that out of my face," she said quietly. "Maya." I said, "Get it out of my face." He pulled it back, smoothed his tie. "My lawyer will be in touch." He walked toward the black car at the curb, a car Maya didn't recognize. And as he opened the passenger door, she saw a woman inside. Dark hair, red lipstick, a smile that was already turning to look straight at Maya. Isabel. Maya knew her. She had met her twice at Marcus's firm parties, had even said in that terrible, innocent way to Marcus, "I like Isabel. She has good energy." And Marcus had nodded and said, "Yeah, she's great," and changed the subject. The car door closed. The car pulled away. And Maya Richardson stood at the cemetery gates in the rain, her father, 200 feet behind her in the ground. Her husband gone, her whole life rearranged in about 90 seconds, and she thought very clearly, very quietly, "What do I do now?" The answer came in her father's voice. She heard it so clearly, she turned around, half expecting to see him. "You go home, baby girl. You rest. Then you read the letter." She had forgotten about the letter. Or maybe she hadn't forgotten. Maybe she had simply known with some deep animal knowing that she wasn't ready for it yet. Her father had given it to her 6 months ago, when his illness first came back. He had pressed it into her hands at his kitchen table, the same table where he had helped her with algebra homework, where he had talked her through every heartbreak and every triumph, and he had said, "Not until I'm gone, Maya. Promise me." She had promised. The letter was in the fireproof box in her closet where she had put it the day he gave it to her and where she had not looked since. She went home. She changed out of the wet dress. She ate something crackers and peanut butter, the only thing she could manage. She lay down on the bed and stared at the ceiling for an hour. The apartment felt like a museum of a life that no longer existed. Marcus's things were still everywhere. His running shoes by the door, his coffee mug on the counter, the photograph of the two of them in Italy on their honeymoon, framed and hung in the hallway, where Maya had to walk past it to get anywhere. She got up. She took the photograph off the wall. She put it face down in the closet next to the fireproof box. And then she sat down on the floor right there in the closet, with her back against the shelves, and she opened the box. The letter was in an envelope marked in her father's careful handwriting, for Maya. When it's time. She opened it. Her hands were not quite steady. "My dearest girl," it began. She had to stop. Take a breath. The sound of his voice in those 3 words was so complete, so real, she pressed the paper against her chest for a moment just to hold something he had held. Then she kept reading. "If you're reading this, then I'm gone, and I'm sorry for that. I never wanted to leave you. Not for a single day of my life did I ever want to be anywhere but right next to you. But I want you to know that wherever I am now, I'm not worried about you. I raised you to handle whatever comes. What I need you to know, what I should have told you years ago and didn't, because I was proud and because I was stubborn and because I wanted you to become who you are, without the weight of it, is this." Maya turned the page. "Your grandfather's name was James Hartwell II. My name, my real name, is James Hartwell III. You are Maya Hartwell by blood, though I changed both our names when I left, and I've kept that secret for 35 years. The crackers she had eaten turned to stone in her stomach. "I left because of love, your mother. God, Maya, your mother was the most beautiful soul I ever knew, and I want you to understand that I chose her completely and without regret. But the Hartwell family did not accept her. They made it clear that if I married her, I was out. No inheritance, no trust, no legacy, nothing. So I chose her. I chose your mother. I chose you. And I have never not for one single second regretted that choice." Maya was crying now. She hadn't felt it start. It was just suddenly there, tears dropping onto the paper, and she was careful, so careful not to let them smear the ink. "But here is what I didn't tell you. When I left the Hartwell family, I didn't leave empty-handed. My grandmother, your great-grandmother, Eloise Hartwell, she loved me. She was the only one who did in that family. Before she died, she set aside a portion of the Hartwell holdings in an irrevocable trust in my name. Irrevocable means they couldn't touch it even if they wanted to. And they wanted to. For years they tried. They couldn't. The trust has been growing since 1987. I've never touched a dollar of it. I lived the life I wanted, doing work I was proud of, raising you the way I believed a child should be raised, on values, not on zeros. But the money has been there, waiting." Maya read the next paragraph 3 times before it made sense. "As of the last statement, the trust, which is now yours entirely and irrevocably yours, holds assets valued at approximately $50 million in liquid accounts and significantly more in investments, real estate, and holdings. The total value last I checked was something in excess of $2 billion. $2 billion. She said the words out loud, just to hear them, just to see if they still sounded real. $2 billion. They didn't sound real. "In the morning," the letter continued, "I need you to go to the First Heritage Private Bank on Alderman Street. Ask for the manager, a man named Theodore Ames. He has known about you since the day you were born. He has been waiting for this letter. Give him the enclosed card." Maya checked the envelope. A small gold card embossed simply with a number and a seal fell into her palm. "Theodore will explain everything. He'll walk you through the accounts, the protections, the legal structures. I had my lawyers build in a spousal exclusion clause 20 years ago. Don't ask me how I knew. I suppose I always worried. It means that no spouse, current or former, can access, claim, or benefit from these assets in any way. This is your inheritance, Maya. Yours alone. Yours and your daughter's." She stopped. Her daughters. He had known. Of course he had known. He always knew. I want you to use it with the same heart you've always had. The heart I am so proud of I could burst. I don't care about the money. I care about what you do with it. I believe you know the difference between wealth and worth. I raised you to know that difference. Don't let anyone take it from you, not the money and not the knowing." The letter ended simply. "I love you, my dearest girl. I love you more than the moon and all the stars behind it. I always will. Go rest. Eat something good. Kiss that baby for me. Your father." Maya sat on the closet floor for a very long time. The apartment was completely silent. Marcus was gone. She understood now that he had probably moved his things out that afternoon while she was at the cemetery. He had been planning this for a long time. The papers had been prepared, the car had been waiting. He had probably felt very clever. She thought about his face. She thought about the way he had looked at her at the gravesite, that particular combination of pity and impatience. She thought about the 7 years she had spent loving him, building a life with him, defending him at family dinners, where her father had been quiet in a way she now understood differently. She thought about every moment she had smoothed things over, made herself smaller, adjusted her brightness so he wouldn't feel dimmed. She didn't feel rage. She tried to find rage and came up empty. What she found instead was something that felt almost like clarity, the kind that comes when you've been squinting at something for years and someone finally hands you the right glasses. She got up off the floor. She was steadier than she expected. She went to the kitchen. She made herself a real meal this time, eggs toast, a glass of juice. She sat at the table and ate it slowly the way her father had always taught her. Never rush a meal, Maya. A person who eats in a hurry is a person who's running from something. Sit down, taste what's in front of you. She tasted it. Then she went to bed. She set her alarm for 7. She put the gold card and the letter in the fireproof box. She lay on her back, with one hand on her belly, feeling her daughter shift and settle, and she looked up at the ceiling in the dark. "Everything is different now," she said to the baby, "but we're going to be all right. I promise you, we are going to be more than all right." The baby was still, trusting her. Maya closed her eyes. Outside somewhere in the city, Marcus was probably toasting his new beginning with a woman in red lipstick who thought she had won. He had no idea what he'd walked away from. Neither really had Maya, but by morning she would begin to understand. Maya did not sleep past 5. She was already awake when the alarm went off, sitting at the kitchen table with her father's letter flattened on the wood in front of her, the gold card beside it, her coffee going cold. She had read the letter 4 more times in the night. Not because she didn't understand it, because she needed to feel every word settle into her body the way her father's voice used to settle into a room, steady, warm, impossible to ignore. Theodore Ames, First Heritage Private Bank, Alderman Street. She said the name out loud the way her father had always told her to do with things that mattered. "Say it out loud, Maya. If you can't say it out loud, you don't own it yet." "Theodore Ames," she said, "First Heritage Private Bank." The baby moved, a slow, rolling shift like agreement. Maya got dressed in the dark. She chose carefully, not because she was trying to impress anyone, but because her father had always said that the way you walk into a room tells people how to treat you before you open your mouth. She wore a charcoal wrap dress, her mother's pearl earrings, low heels. She looked in the mirror once long enough to see something her father used to point to when she was a girl, the set of her jaw, the steadiness behind her eyes. He called it the Hartwell look. She had always thought he was just being sentimental. She understood it differently now. She was out the door by 7:15. The city was still quiet the way it only is before 8, that particular urban silence that feels borrowed. She drove herself. No driver, no assistant, no one. She wanted to arrive alone because arriving alone meant arriving as herself. Alderman Street was in a part of the city Maya had driven past 100 times without registering. It didn't announce itself. That was the first thing she noticed. No gleaming tower, no imposing marble entrance with the bank's name carved 40 feet high. Just a discreet building set back slightly from the street, a brushed bronze door, and a small plaque beside it that read simply, First Heritage, established 1891. She sat in the car for 60 seconds, just breathed, one hand on the steering wheel, one on her stomach. "Okay, baby," she said quietly. "Here we go." The man who met her in the lobby was not what she had expected. Theodore Ames was 70, at least compact and precise, with silver hair and a way of holding himself that reminded Maya immediately and painfully of her father, that particular combination of dignity and warmth that has nothing to do with money and everything to do with character. He was waiting for her when she came through the door, not summoned by a receptionist, not appearing after a delay, waiting, as if he had been doing so for some time. "Miss Richardson," he said, and then corrected himself immediately without embarrassment. "Miss Hartwell, forgive me. I've been thinking of you as both for so long I sometimes lose track." He extended his hand. "I'm Theodore. I was your father's friend for 31 years. I'm very sorry for your loss." Maya shook his hand. She had prepared herself to be professional, measured, controlled. She had not prepared for the word friend, and the way he said it simply without performance cracked something open in her chest. "He talked about you," she managed. Theodore smiled, and it was a sad smile, the smile of a man who had already done his grieving in private. "He talked about you constantly. Every quarter review, every annual meeting, 10 minutes of business, 50 minutes of Maya." He gestured toward a hallway. "Shall we? I have everything ready." She followed him through the lobby and into a corridor that had the particular hushed quality of old money and serious purpose. Not intimidating, just serious, like a library or a church. Theodore led her into a private meeting room, closed the door, and sat across from her at a table where a neat stack of folders and a leather portfolio already waited. He folded his hands on the table and looked at her directly. "Before we look at the documents," he said, "I want to ask you something. How much did your father tell you in the letter? That his name was James Hartwell III, that he left the family when he married my mother, that his grandmother left him an irrevocable trust." Maya paused. "That the total value was something above $2 billion. Theodore nodded slowly. "That's accurate as of 3 years ago when he last updated the letter. I want to give you the current figure because things have moved." He opened the portfolio, turned it toward her. "As of the last statement dated 1st of this month, the total value of your holdings, accounts, trusts, real estate, and equity positions is $4,300 million. The number landed in the room like a stone dropped into still water. Maya looked at the figure on the page. She looked at it for a long time. "Say it out loud," she said almost to herself. Theodore watched her with kind eyes. "I'm sorry. Something my father used to say. If you can't say it out loud, you don't own it yet." She looked up. $4,300 million. "Yes," she breathed. "In, out, in. And Marcus can't touch any of it." Theodore's expression didn't change, but something behind his eyes sharpened slightly. "You know about the spousal exclusion clause. My father mentioned it. Your father was extremely thorough." Theodore leaned forward. "Miss Hartwell, the clause your father had drafted is the most airtight legal instrument of its kind that I have seen in 30 years of private banking. It excludes all current and former spouses, their legal representatives, and any entity they control from accessing, claiming, inheriting, or benefiting from these assets in any direct or indirect way. Your husband, your former husband, could hire every lawyer in this city and he would not find a single crack in that wall." A pause. "Your father spent significant time and resources making sure of that." Maya looked at her hands on the table. Her father's hands. She had always had his hands. "He knew," she said quietly. "He knew about Marcus." "He never said so explicitly," Theodore said carefully. "But he asked for that clause to be drafted and refined over several years, and he asked with," Theodore chose his words, "considerable feeling." A sound came out of Maya that was almost a laugh. "He never liked him. He loved you enough to protect you from choices he wasn't sure about. That's a different thing than disliking someone." She sat with that for a moment. Outside the room, somewhere distant, the ordinary sounds of a bank morning were beginning. Here in this room, everything was very still. "I need you to walk me through everything," she said. "All of it. I want to understand every account, every holding, every legal structure. I don't want someone else to manage this and hand me summaries. I want to understand it." Theodore Ames looked at her with an expression that she recognized, the same expression Father Dominic had worn at the pulpit, the same expression the bookshop owner had worn, pressing her hand. Recognition, like seeing someone confirm who you already suspected they were. "Your father said you'd say almost exactly that," Theodore told her. "What did he say exactly?" "He said, and I wrote it down because James had a way of saying things worth writing down, he said, 'My daughter won't be handed the keys. She'll ask for the blueprint.'" Maya pressed her lips together. Her eyes stung. She did not look away. "Then let's start with the blueprint," she said. They were in that room for 4 hours. 4 hours that remade the world Maya thought she lived in. Theodore walked her through everything the Hartwell family trust, which her great-grandmother Eloise had quietly carved away from the family's main holdings decades ago. The investment accounts, the real estate portfolio spanning 6 states, the equity positions in companies Maya had heard of, companies she used every day without knowing her name was attached to them in any way. The Richardson Hartwell Foundation, which her father had established 8 years ago under a name that combined his given identity with his chosen one, a private joke, Theodore told her, and also a statement of intent. "He was always going to tell you," Theodore said. "He just wanted to wait until you were settled. And then he kept waiting because he wanted to be sure." "Sure of what?" "That you didn't need it to be who you are." Theodore's voice was even but deliberate. He was very specific about that. He didn't want the money to arrive before your character did. He thought they should meet each other as equals. Maya stared at the table. Something was building in her chest that was not grief and not joy and not rage. It was something she didn't have a precise word for, the feeling of being known so completely by someone who was no longer there to know you. "The foundation," she said, pulling herself back. "Tell me about the foundation." Theodore brightened slightly, the first shift in his professional composure. "The Richardson Hartwell Foundation was your father's particular love. $50 million endowment established with the mission of supporting workforce development, educational access, and single-parent family programs. He built it quietly over 8 years. He never put his name on any public materials, but the foundation has an inaugural gala planned. It was planned before his death at his instruction, for 6 weeks from now." Theodore paused. "He planned it as the moment the Hartwell name would re-enter public life, through you, as the foundation's primary benefactor and founder." Maya was quiet for several seconds. "He planned a gala." "He did." 6 weeks from now." "Yes. While he was sick." "He finalized the details in October. His exact words to the event coordinator were, 'My daughter will handle the rest. Just make sure the room is full of the right people.'" Maya looked at the ceiling. She was half laughing and half crying, and entirely her father's daughter. "Of course he did," she said. "Of course he did." She was back in her car by 1 in the afternoon, sitting in the parking structure with the engine off and a leather folder full of documents in the passenger seat. The gold card was back in her wallet. Theodore had given her his private line, a contact number for the foundation's legal team, and a firm handshake that lasted a half-second longer than professional necessity required. "Your father was a great man," he had said at the door. "Not because of what he had, because of what he chose." Now Maya sat in the quiet of the parking structure and let everything settle. $4 billion, a foundation with her name on it, a gala in 6 weeks. Her phone buzzed. She looked at it. A text from a number she didn't recognize. "Ms. Richardson, my name is Daniel Park. I'm the attorney your father retained for the spousal exclusion and estate matters. I understand you met with Theodore this morning. When you're ready, I'd like to meet at your convenience. There is one additional document your father asked me to deliver in person." She texted back, "Tomorrow, 10 a.m. She sat another moment. Then she opened her contacts, scrolled to a name she hadn't called in 6 months, and pressed dial. The phone rang twice. "Maya?" The voice was warm and startled. "Maya, oh my, I saw the obituary. I've been thinking about you every day. How are you? Where are you? Are you okay?" Denise Carter had been Maya's closest friend from graduate school, a sharp and loyal woman who had never hidden her feelings about Marcus, and who Maya had slowly, guiltily drifted from over the past 2 years because Marcus found Denise exhausting. Hearing her voice now was like walking into a room that smelled like home. "I'm sitting in a parking garage," Maya said. "I just came from a meeting that completely rearranged everything I thought I knew about my life." A beat. Good rearranged or bad rearranged? I honestly don't know yet. Both maybe. Denise Marcus filed for divorce at the cemetery yesterday. The silence on the other end of the line had a particular texture to it, the texture of someone physically restraining themselves. He did what? At the cemetery gates, after the service. Maya. He had papers prepared, and Isabel was in the car. The sound Denise made was not a word. It was a very controlled, very deliberate exhale that communicated about 40 things at once. Then, "I need you to tell me everything, from the beginning. And I need you to know that I am on the next flight if you say the word. I don't need you on a flight. I need you on the phone." Then I'm on the phone. Talk. And Maya talked. Not about the bank. She wasn't ready for that yet. She needed to hold it close for a little while longer, let it become real in her own mind, before she gave it words to anyone else. She talked about Marcus, about the gala at the grave, about the papers in the envelope, about the way he hadn't looked back. Denise listened without interrupting, which was unlike her, which told Maya everything about how seriously she was taking it. When Maya finished, the line was quiet for a moment. "You know what the problem is with men like Marcus?" Denise said finally. "Tell me." "They think quiet means empty. They think patient means passive. They mistake your grace for weakness and call it winning." A pause. "He has no idea what he just walked away from. Not a single idea." Maya looked at the folder in the passenger seat. "No," she said softly, "he really doesn't." That evening, Maya did something she hadn't done in years. She cooked a real dinner, her father's recipe for pot roast, the one she'd watched him make on Sunday afternoons, her whole childhood, the one that took 4 hours and made the whole apartment smell like something safe. She put on the old jazz station her father loved. She moved slowly and deliberately around the kitchen, and she let herself remember. She remembered sitting on the kitchen counter as a 6-year-old watching him cook with the same focused attention he brought to everything. She remembered him saying, "You see how long this takes, Maya? Good things always take longer than you think they should. That's how you know they're worth it." She stirred the pot. She thought about Marcus somewhere in the city right now, probably feeling like he had made the smart move, the practical move. He had cut loose the wife who had nothing, who came from nothing, who was about to be a single mother with a dead janitor for a father. He had moved on to Isabel, who came from the right family, who knew the right people, who looked right beside him at the right events. He had no idea. The thought did not make Maya happy exactly. It made her something more complicated and more quiet than happy. It made her feel the particular weight of knowing something no one else in the room knows yet. Her phone buzzed again. This time, it was a number she recognized. Marcus's lawyer. She looked at the notification. Let it sit. Then she put the phone face down on the counter, turned the jazz up slightly, and went back to stirring. Let them wait. She had learned patience from the most patient man she had ever known. She could wait. She was very, very good at waiting. The dinner turned out exactly right. She ate it alone at her father's table, the small round table she'd brought from his apartment after he got too sick to use it, the one with the ring stain from 30 years of Sunday coffee mugs. She ate slowly. She tasted every bite. She thought about 6 weeks from now. A room full of the right people, her name on a foundation, her father's name in the walls of everything invisible and enormous the way he had always been. She thought about Marcus walking into that room not knowing. She thought about the look on his face. And for the first time in 4 days, Maya Richardson sat up straight and let herself feel something that was not grief. It felt like the first morning after a very long storm, still and bright and entirely hers. Daniel Park was younger than Maya expected. She had pictured someone Theodore's age, silver-haired, measured built, from decades of careful discretion. The man who stood up when she walked into the conference room the next morning was maybe 40, sharp-eyed behind wire-rimmed glasses, with the kind of contained energy that made her think of a clock wound very tight. He shook her hand firmly and gestured to the chair across from him without preamble, which she immediately respected. "I'll be direct," he said, before she'd even set her bag down. "Your father asked me to be direct with you. He said anything less would be an insult to your intelligence." Maya settled into the chair. Then be direct. Daniel opened the folder in front of him and slid a document across the table. This is the final piece. Your father drafted it 2 months before he passed. It's not a legal instrument. It's a letter of instruction. Private, not binding in court, but it outlines exactly how he wanted you to use the first 12 months of your inheritance. It's his roadmap. She looked at the document but didn't touch it yet. What does it say? I haven't read it, Daniel said. He sealed it. It's addressed to you. A pause. But he did tell me 3 things he wanted me to communicate verbally before you opened it. Go ahead. Daniel looked down at a notepad. First, take 60 days before you make any major decision, not because you're not capable, because 60 days of watching teaches you more than 60 days of moving. His words. He looked up. Second, the foundation gala proceeds as planned. He made that non-negotiable. The date, the venue, the guest list. All locked. Your role is to show up as yourself. Maya nodded slowly. And third, Daniel set down the notepad. His expression shifted, not unprofessional, but human. Third, he said, and I'm quoting directly because I wrote it down the moment he said it, tell her that Marcus already lost. He just doesn't know the score yet. She doesn't have to do a single thing. She just has to wait. The room was very quiet. Maya reached across the table and picked up the sealed envelope. Her father's handwriting on the front. Her name written the way he always wrote it, both names full and unhurried. Maya Grace Richardson, like he had all the time in the world. She didn't open it there. She put it in her bag. Daniel didn't ask why. He understood she could tell that some things need to be opened in private. What do I need from you right now? She asked. Marcus's attorney has already contacted our office, Daniel said, and the shift in his tone was immediate and precise, the way a surgeon picks up a scalpel. They're requesting a full financial disclosure as part of the divorce proceedings. Standard procedure. We will comply with full disclosure of all assets held in your name prior to the marriage. He paused, letting that land, which is a legal and accurate disclosure, because the Hartwell Trust and all its holdings were established long before your marriage and are structurally excluded from marital property under both the prenuptial terms and the spousal exclusion clause. Maya looked at him steadily. So Marcus's attorney gets the disclosure they asked for? Yes. And finds nothing. They will find the assets you accumulated during the marriage, which are modest. They will find no reference to the Hartwell holdings because those are held in a separate legal entity with no connection to your marital estate. Daniel's expression was precise and entirely untroubled. What they're looking for isn't there, because your father made sure it was never there to begin with. Maya leaned back in her chair. Something loosened in her chest. Not relief exactly, but the particular satisfaction of watching a door lock from the inside. He really thought of everything, she said quietly. He thought of everything twice, Daniel said, and then had 3 attorneys review it. She left Daniel's office at 11:30 and sat in her car in the January cold, with her hands in her lap, the sealed envelope on the passenger seat beside the leather portfolio from Theodore, and she thought about her father spending years building invisible walls around her future without ever telling her they existed. Not because he doubted her, because he loved her so much that he couldn't stand the thought of leaving her exposed. She thought about him going to work every day, janitor's uniform, building access badge, people passing him in hallways without seeing him, and carrying all of this billions of dollars legal structures, a foundation, a plan inside himself like a quiet fire that never went out. She pressed her forehead against the steering wheel for 10 seconds. Just 10. Then she sat up, started the car, called Denise. I need a favor, she said when Denise picked up. Anything. I need you to come stay with me for a few weeks. Not because I can't manage, because I don't want to do this next part alone. There was exactly 1 second of silence. I'm looking at flights right now, Denise said. I'll be there by 7. Denise arrived at 7:14 with a rolling suitcase, a bag of groceries, and the particular expression of a woman who has decided that something is going to be handled. She hugged Maya for a long time without saying anything, which was exactly right. Then she held Maya at arm's length, looked at her face carefully, and said, You look different. Different how? Like something settled in you. Denise studied her another moment. Something happened, beyond the obvious. What happened? Maya had decided on the drive home. She was going to tell Denise. Not everything, not the full number, not yet, because she was still learning to carry it herself, and handing it to someone else before she could hold it steadily felt premature. But enough. Enough for Denise to understand what the next 6 weeks were. She made tea. They sat at her father's table. She told Denise about the letter, the Bank Theodore Daniel the Gala. She watched Denise's face move through about 11 expressions in 4 minutes: shock, confusion, awe, fury at Marcus, something approaching reverence when she talked about James Richardson, and finally, a kind of fierce, tearful pride. "Your father," Denise said finally, her voice unsteady. "Your father was Maya. Your father was extraordinary." "I know. He cleaned office buildings." "He chose to." Denise shook her head slowly. "And Marcus sat across from that man at dinners and looked down on him." "Yes. And the whole time. Denise was quiet for a moment. Then she said very calmly, "I want to be in that room at the gala." "You will be," Maya said. "You're my +1. The next 3 weeks moved differently than any weeks Maya had lived before. They moved with purpose. Theodore had assigned her a private wealth advisor named Sandra, a brisk and brilliant woman in her 50s who communicated in facts and had no patience for either condescension or unnecessary gentleness, which Maya found deeply refreshing. They met 3 times a week. Maya learned. She asked questions that made Sandra pause and then nod with something that might have been approval. She learned the language of the portfolio the way she'd learned every other language in her life, completely without shortcuts. The foundation's executive director, a woman named Claire Osei, called her in week 2. Claire had been running the foundation's operational side for 3 years under James's quiet direction, and she had the voice of someone who had been holding things together very carefully and was relieved to finally have a hand to pass them to. "Your father described you accurately," Claire said on the phone without preamble. "How did he describe me?" "He said you'd want to understand the mission before you touch the money." A beat. "So let me tell you the mission," Claire explained. Workforce development programs targeting communities with high single-parent household rates, scholarship pipelines that started in middle school, not college, wraparound support childcare subsidies, job training, mental health access, because James Richardson had known that poverty is never one problem, it's always 10 problems at once. The programs were already running quietly in 4 cities. The gala was the public debut, the moment the Richardson Hartwell Foundation stepped out of the shadows and announced itself. "He wanted the programs to exist before the name did," Claire told her. "He said results should precede reputation." Maya sat with the phone pressed to her ear and felt her father so clearly in those words that she had to close her eyes. "Claire," she said, "I want to visit every program site before the gala. I want to meet the families." A pause on the other end, then warmly, "He said you'd say that too." In week 3, Marcus's lawyer called her directly. She let it go to voicemail. Listened to it later in the car, a professionally neutral message about expediting the financial disclosure process, the need for her cooperation, the desire to keep proceedings amicable. She forwarded it to Daniel without listening to it a second time. Daniel called her back within the hour. "They're pushing because they think there's something to find," he said. "The fact that you married well, lived in a certain zip code, they've built an assumption. Let them push. They'll hit the wall soon enough." "How soon?" "They filed a motion for extended discovery this morning. The judge will schedule a hearing. I'd estimate 3 to 4 weeks before they realize the discovery is going to yield exactly nothing of interest to them." A pause. "Would you like me to communicate anything to opposing counsel in the meantime?" "Tell them we look forward to full cooperation with the discovery process," Maya said. "Tell them that warmly." She could hear Daniel almost smile. "Warmly. Understood." 2 weeks before the gala, Maya visited the Foundation's workforce program in the city's East Side neighborhood. Claire met her there. The program operated out of a converted community center. Nothing glamorous, everything functional. The kind of space that says we are serious about this work. She met women her age and older who were rebuilding after divorce, after job loss, after the particular devastation of being left with children and no infrastructure. She sat with them. She listened. She didn't mention the Foundation's resources or her role. She just listened. One woman, Tanya, 38. 2 kids, 18 months out of a bad marriage, said something Maya wrote down in the small notebook she'd started carrying. Tanya said, "The hardest part wasn't starting over. The hardest part was believing I deserved to." Maya looked at her. "How did you get past that?" Tanya shrugged with a tired, real honesty. "Someone showed up who believed it first. Sometimes that's all it takes. Someone who sees you before you can see yourself." Maya thought about her father at his kitchen table, talking her through every hard thing she'd ever faced. She thought about a janitor who carried billions in silence and chose every single day to spend his wealth on presents instead. She thought about Naomi Grace shifting and growing and getting ready to arrive into a world her grandfather had quietly, painstakingly prepared for her. She did not cry in that room. She saved it for the car, where she sat for 5 minutes with both hands over her face and let it move through her. Then she wiped her face, opened her notebook, and wrote for 20 minutes straight ideas for the foundation program expansions, things she wanted to fund, structures she wanted to build. She wrote until her hand ached. Then she drove home. 1 week before the gala, something happened that she had not anticipated. Isabel called. Not Marcus. Isabel. From a number Maya didn't have saved, but the name came up because Maya had never deleted the contact from that firm party 2 years ago when she had saved it thinking they might be friends someday. Maya stared at the screen for 4 full rings. Then she answered. "Isabel." A breath on the other end. Then, "I wasn't sure you'd pick up." "I wasn't sure I would either." Maya kept her voice level. "What do you want?" A pause. The sound of someone choosing words carefully and still not finding the right ones. "I wanted to say I'm sorry. I know it's not enough. I'm not calling for forgiveness. I'm calling because I think you deserve to know that this isn't what I thought it was going to be." Maya was very still. Her quiet eye opened wide and just watched. "He lied to me too," Isabel said, and her voice cracked slightly on the last word. "He told me you two had been over for years. He told me the marriage was just paperwork. He told me you were—" She stopped. "It doesn't matter what he told me. I should have known better." The silence stretched. "Isabel," Maya said finally, "why are you really calling?" A long pause. "Because I saw the divorce filing, and I saw the financial disclosure his lawyers requested. And Marcus he's been talking about the Richardson money constantly. How much there must be, what he's going to get." Another pause, more ragged this time. "He married me 3 weeks after your father's funeral, Maya. 3 weeks. And all he talks about is what's coming to him." Maya looked at the wall across the room. Her father's face in a photograph she'd hung there last week. "Is he treating you well?" she asked. Not warmly, not coldly. Simply asked the way you ask something you want an honest answer to. The silence answered before Isabel did. "I need to go," Isabel said quietly. I needed to say I was sorry, to an actual human being who deserved the apology. "I'm sorry, Maya." The line went dead. Maya sat holding the phone. She did not feel satisfaction. She didn't feel vindicated. She felt something more complicated and less comfortable, a kind of sorrow for the particular way certain men move through the world, collecting damage and leaving it behind them, and for the women on all sides of that damage who end up holding it. She called Denise. "Isabel just called me," she said, a sharp intake. "What?" She apologized. She said Marcus lied to her too. She said all he talks about is the Richardson money and what he's going to get. Denise was quiet for exactly 2 seconds. "He's going to walk into that gala thinking he's about to embarrass you." "Yes. And instead, Maya said, he's going to find out exactly what he threw away." The gala was in 6 days. Maya opened her closet that night and stood in front of it for a long time. Denise appeared in the doorway with 2 mugs of tea. "What are you looking for?" Denise asked. "The right dress." Maya turned to look at her. "He's going to be there. He's going to walk in expecting to see the woman he discarded, the grieving widow, the abandoned pregnant wife." She paused. "I need to walk in as someone he doesn't recognize." Denise sipped her tea, thought about it. "Not someone he doesn't recognize," she said. "Someone he never knew existed." She set down her mug. "And that person has been there the whole time. You just never had a reason to let him see her." Maya looked at her for a moment. Then she reached past the black dress she'd worn to the funeral and pulled out something she'd bought 2 years ago and never worn, a deep midnight blue, understated and precise, the kind of dress that says nothing loudly and everything quietly. "This one," she said. Denise looked at it, nodded once. "That's the one." Maya hung it on the door and stepped back and looked at it. 6 days. The room her father had arranged, the people he had chosen, the name he had carried in secret for 35 years, ready to come home. And Marcus somewhere in the city, still counting money that was never his, still believing that the quiet woman he had left in the rain at a graveside was the whole story. He had never understood the first thing about her. In 6 days, he would begin to. The morning of the gala, Maya woke at 5, without an alarm. She lay still for a moment, one hand on her stomach, feeling Naomi move in that slow, rolling way she had taken to in the last weeks, less like kicking now, and more like turning, repositioning, getting ready. 8 months along. The doctor had cleared her for the event with specific instructions: sit when you need to eat regularly, leave early if anything feels off. Maya had nodded and intended to follow exactly 2 of those 3 directions. Denise was already in the kitchen. Maya could hear her moving around the particular rhythm of someone who handles anxiety by doing things with their hands. She smelled coffee and something toasting, and underneath it all, the faint trace of the perfume Denise only wore on important occasions. Maya sat up, put her feet on the floor, said out loud to the room, to her father, to herself, "Today is the day." Nothing answered, but the room felt full anyway. She went to the kitchen. Denise turned from the counter and looked at her with an expression that was trying very hard to be casual and failing completely. "You sleep?" Denise asked. "Enough. Eat something real, not crackers." "I know." They ate together at her father's table, eggs, fruit, toast, and didn't talk much, which was its own kind of comfort. Outside, the city was starting its morning. Inside, between these 2 women who had known each other for 15 years and survived about 30 collective catastrophes, something was being quietly gathered and held. At 8, Maya's phone buzzed. A text from Claire Ose. "Everything is in place. The room is extraordinary. Your father would have loved it and pretended not to be impressed." Then a second text 30 seconds later. "Victor is confirmed. He'll arrive at 5 to walk you through the program order. The guest list is locked at 240. 3 journalists on background, only no cameras without consent." Maya showed the texts to Denise without comment. Denise read them, set the phone down. "Victor Kane," she said. "The Victor Kane. My father chose him personally." Victor Kane was one of those figures whose name opened every room in the city. A philanthropist, a former federal judge, a man whose moral credibility was so established and so long built that his endorsement of anything carried the weight of institutional approval. He had been a quiet board member of the Richardson Hartwell Foundation since its inception. He had known James Richardson. Maya had learned from Claire for over 20 years. He had never once mentioned it publicly. He had simply shown up when needed and kept his word, the way her father kept his word, the way certain men of a certain generation understood loyalty to mean something serious and permanent. At 10 o'clock, Daniel Park called. "I have an update on the discovery proceedings," he said. "Marcus's legal team submitted their full motion yesterday. The judge reviewed it this morning." Maya set down her tea. "And motion denied." His voice was professionally neutral, but she could hear the particular flatness of someone actively suppressing satisfaction. The judge found insufficient grounds to extend discovery beyond the standard marital asset scope. Their theory that you had concealed assets during the marriage is unsupported by any evidence that exists, because there is no such evidence, because the assets were never marital property. She was quiet for a moment. "They're going to be very confused tonight," she said. Daniel paused. "Tonight. Marcus will be at the gala." Another pause. Longer. "He's on the guest list." "He was added by the foundation 3 years ago when my father was building the donor community. Marcus was a mid-level donor to several arts foundations my father was connected to. The invitation went out 6 months ago, before my father passed, before any of this happened." "And you didn't remove him?" "No," Maya said simply. "I didn't." The silence on Daniel's end had a very specific quality to it, the quality of a very careful attorney deciding whether to say the thing he was thinking. "Miss Hartwell," he said finally, "I'll just say that I would very much like to be a fly on the wall this evening." "Come," Maya said. "Bring your wife. There are 2 seats at my table." The afternoon passed in a particular kind of focused calm. The hair and makeup artist Denise had arranged arrived at 2. Maya sat in the chair at her kitchen table and let herself be worked on with the specific surrender of someone who has learned to accept help gracefully. The woman Renata, warm and efficient and mercifully quiet, moved around her with professional confidence. And Maya sat straight and breathed and looked at her own face in the mirror with something she was still learning to call by its right name. Denise was in the next room getting ready, calling out occasional commentary through the wall. "Don't let her do the thing where she overblends the yes good. That's what I meant. Maya, tell her your cheekbones are the whole point." "My cheekbones are the whole point," Maya said obediently. Renata smiled. "I noticed." At 4:15, Maya put on the midnight blue dress. She stood in front of the mirror for a full minute. 8 months pregnant, her father's pearls at her ears, her mother's steady eyes in her own face, the Hartwell jaw that she now understood differently, and a kind of quiet authority that she recognized as not new, but finally unhidden. Denise appeared in the doorway, stopped, put one hand over her mouth. "Denise," Maya said. "I'm fine," Denise said in the voice of someone who is absolutely not fine. "I'm completely fine. You look like your father if your father were—" She stopped, started again. "You look like power that decided to get dressed up. That's what you look like." Maya looked at her reflection one more moment. Then she turned away from it, picked up her evening bag and said, "Let's go." Victor Kane was already there when they arrived at the venue at 5:15. He was standing near the entrance to the main room with Claire Osei. The 2 of them bent over a program, and he looked up when Maya walked in and did something she had not expected. He straightened. Fully. The way people straighten for someone whose presence requires it. He crossed the room and took both her hands in his. He was in his late 60s, silver-haired, with a face that had lived in it, a face that had made hard decisions and sat with them and come out the other side with something that looked like peace. "Maya," he said. Not Miss Richardson, not Miss Hartwell. Maya, as if he'd known her for years, because through her father he essentially had. "Your father talked about this night for 3 years. He planned every detail. He just didn't plan to miss it." His voice was steady, but his eyes were not quite. "I intend to make sure it happens exactly as he wanted. You have my word. That's enough for me," she said, and meant it. Victor walked her through the program. Her role was precise. She would be introduced at the beginning as the Foundation's primary benefactor and founder. Victor would speak to her father's legacy, the Foundation's mission, the scope of the work already underway. Maya would speak briefly, 5 minutes no more her choice, and then the evening would proceed with donor recognition program presentations and the formal announcement of the Foundation's next 3-year initiative. "The guest list," Victor said carefully at the end of the walkthrough. "I understand there may be some familiar faces." "Marcus will be here," Maya said, "with Isabel most likely." Victor looked at her steadily. "How would you like to handle that?" "I don't want to handle it at all," Maya said. "I want to walk into this room and do exactly what my father planned and let the truth do whatever it does. That's all." Victor studied her for a moment. Something in his expression settled a decision made about who she was. "Your father," he said, "was a very wise man, and he raised someone wiser." Guests began arriving at 6:30. Maya stood with Denise near the Foundation's display, photographs of the program sites, portraits of participating families, a quiet visual testimony to 5 years of invisible work, and she watched the room fill. Theodore was there, impeccable and warm. Sandra, her wealth advisor, arrived with her husband and shook Maya's hand with the particular respect of someone who has seen the numbers and understands what they represent. Daniel Park arrived at 6:45 with his wife, a small, bright-eyed woman named Helen, who hugged Maya immediately and said, "I've been following your father's work for years without knowing it was his. He touched my cousin's family through the East Side program. I didn't know until Daniel told me last week." She stepped back and looked at Maya directly. "Thank you for continuing it." Maya took that in, let herself feel it. At 6:58, Marcus walked in. She knew the moment it happened, not because she was watching the door, but because she felt Denise go absolutely still beside her. Denise had a radar for Marcus that operated on frequencies below conscious thought, and her stillness was as clear as an alarm. Maya did not turn immediately. She finished the sentence she was saying to Theodore, thanked him, and then naturally shifted her position. Marcus was across the room. He was in his best suit. She recognized it, the charcoal Italian wool he saved for events that mattered to him, and he was scanning the room with the particular expression of a man doing quick social calculations, assessing who was here, what it meant, how to position himself. Isabel was not with him. He had come alone. He hadn't seen Maya yet. She watched him work the room, a handshake. Here, a name recognition nod there, watched him start to understand from the quality of the guests, the weight of the room, that he had arrived somewhere more significant than a charity dinner. She could see it happening in real time, the recalibration, the upgrade of his attention. And then he saw her. She was watching when it happened. The exact moment his eyes found her across the room and stopped. She did not look away. She did not smile. She simply held his gaze for 3 full seconds, steady, unbothered, entirely herself, and then turned back to her conversation. She felt him try to understand what he had just seen and fail. Good. At 7:15, Marcus appeared at her elbow. She had known he would. He couldn't not. Whatever calculation he was running in his head, whatever he thought he was doing here, he couldn't stand in the same room with Maya Richardson and not try to control the narrative. "Maya," he said. The voice he used on important occasions, warm, measured just slightly lowered, as if they were sharing something private. You look incredible." She turned to face him, kept her expression neutral, not cold, not warm, present. "Marcus, I didn't realize you were involved with this foundation." He glanced around the room, reassessing. "Your father's connections." "Something like that." He was trying to read her. She could feel it. He had always prided himself on being able to read people. It was the thing he most often said about himself, that he was good with people, that he understood them. He was not, she had come to understand, particularly good with people. He was good with surfaces, and she was not offering him a surface tonight. "We should talk," he said, "about the proceedings. I think we can—" "Marcus," she said very quietly, very evenly, "this is not the place, and I'm not the person you negotiated with. Call Daniel Park's office on Monday." His jaw tightened, just slightly. "I'm trying to be civil." "I know you are," she said. "Monday, Daniel Park." She turned back to Denise. She heard him stand there for another 2 seconds, then move away. Denise leaned in. "How are you?" she murmured. "Completely fine," Maya said. And this time it was true. At 7:45, Victor Kane took the podium. The room settled with the particular speed of 240 people who have been in enough important rooms to know when something real is about to happen. Victor spoke about James Richardson the way someone speaks when they are telling the truth. Not performing tribute, but actually remembering a person. He talked about meeting him at a community development conference 22 years ago, a man with rough hands and a sharp mind and a habit of asking questions that made you think for 3 days afterward. He talked about being slowly over years brought into confidence about the Hartwell history, the inheritance, the choice, the trust, the plan. He talked about a father who had decided that the most powerful thing he could give his daughter was not money, but the formation of character, and who had then spent 30 years doing exactly that, and then arranged for the money to arrive after the character was complete. The room was very quiet. Maya sat at the center table, Denise on one side, Daniel on the other, and let her father's story fill the room that he had planned for exactly this. James Hartwell III, Victor said, was the wealthiest janitor in American history and the most intentional father I have ever known. He paused. He asked me to say one thing on his behalf tonight, and I want to say it exactly as he wrote it. Victor looked down at a card in his hand. The Richardson Hartwell Foundation exists because one man loved one woman enough to walk away from everything and loved one daughter enough to leave everything behind. Wealth is only as good as the character that guides it. My daughter has the character. The rest is just numbers. Someone in the back of the room began to applaud first. By the time it reached the front, it was the whole room, and it was not polite applause. It was the kind that comes from somewhere real. Maya stood. Not because it was expected, because she needed to be on her feet for this. She looked across the room and found Marcus. He was standing near the back. His face was doing something she had never seen it do in 7 years. It was doing the thing faces do when the ground shifts, and there is nothing to hold on to, a kind of free fall behind the eyes, a scramble for solid surface that finds none. He had just understood. Not all of it, not the full number, not the legal structure, not the walls her father had built, but enough. He had understood enough to do the arithmetic, to look back across 7 years and add everything up differently, to see the woman he had discarded in the rain at a cemetery and understand too late what she actually was. Maya looked at him for exactly 2 seconds. Then she looked away, not with anger, not with triumph, with the simple finality of someone closing a chapter that no longer required her attention. She walked to the podium. The room went quiet again. She stood at the microphone with one hand resting lightly on her stomach, where Naomi Grace shifted and settled, and she looked out at 240 people and said, "My father was a janitor. He chose that. He had other options, and he chose that because he believed that how you spend your time is who you are. He spent his time doing work that was real, raising a daughter he was proud of, and quietly, patiently building something that was meant to outlast him." She paused. "I used to think his greatest gift to me was resilience, the ability to take hard things and keep going. But I understand now that resilience was just the surface. The real gift was deeper. He taught me that the people who underestimate you are not your problem. They are simply wrong about you. And eventually reality corrects the record." She looked down for a moment, found her breath. The Richardson Hartwell Foundation is his legacy, and now mine. We are here tonight not to celebrate wealth. Wealth is just a tool, and tools only matter when they're in the right hands. But to celebrate the people this foundation exists to serve. The single mothers rebuilding, the families finding their footing, the children getting a start that they deserved from the beginning. She steadied her voice. "My father believed in those people. I believe in those people, and we are just getting started." The applause came again, warmer this time, personal. Maya stepped back from the podium. Victor touched her arm briefly, a small, solid acknowledgement. Daniel was standing when she reached the table, and he extended his hand formally, but his eyes were bright. She sat down. Denise handed her a glass of water without a word. Across the room, Marcus was still standing near the back. He was looking at her. She could feel it, but she didn't turn. She sipped her water. She listened to Claire Osei take the podium to present the Foundation's program work. She listened to a woman from the East Side Workforce Program, not Tanya, a different woman, but the same story told in different words describe what the Foundation's support had meant to her family. She listened to her father's work speak for itself. At 9:15, she smoothed her dress and told Denise she was ready to go. "Already," Denise said, but she was already reaching for her bag. "My father said do the work and go home." Maya picked up her evening bag. "The work is done." They moved through the room, slowly stopping for brief exchanges, warm handshakes, a long embrace from Theodore, who seemed to be trying very hard not to cry and not quite succeeding. At the edge of the room, Claire Osei caught Maya's hand and pressed it between both of hers. "He would have cried," Claire said. "He always pretended he wouldn't, but he would have cried." "I know," Maya said. "He was terrible at pretending not to care." She was almost at the door when she felt someone step into her path. She looked up. Marcus. He was standing directly in front of her. His composure was still in place, but it was held together now by visible effort, the way a wall holds when water's been pressing on it for a long time. "Maya," he said. His voice was different, not the measured tone from earlier. Something underneath it was shaking. She waited. "I didn't know," he said, "about any of this, your father, the Foundation. I know you didn't," she said quietly. He stopped, started again. "I was wrong." She looked at him. at this man she had loved and built a life with, and who had left her in the rain at her father's grave. She looked at him without hatred and without softness, with the clear, unflinching eyes of someone who has finished grieving a particular loss and come out the other side with their character intact. "Yes," she said, "you were." She stepped around him, walked through the door, felt the cool night air on her face. Denise fell into step beside her, said nothing for half a block. Then, "How do you feel?" Maya thought about it, really thought about it the way her father had always insisted she do not the quick answer the real one. "Like myself," she said finally, "for the first time in a very long time, like completely, entirely myself." Denise nodded, took her arm. They walked to the car together, two women in good dresses on a cold night, and behind them the gala continued, and Marcus stood in the middle of it with nothing to hold on to, and ahead of them the city opened up wide and full of possibility, and underneath Maya's hand Naomi Grace turned and stretched and pressed against her palm like a small insistent hello. "Soon," Maya told her, "we're almost there." 3 weeks after the gala, Maya's water broke at 2:17 in the morning. She knew it was coming. Her body had been telling her for 2 days the low, persistent pressure the way Naomi had dropped and gone quiet, conserving herself getting ready. Maya had packed her bag a week earlier, set it by the bedroom door, told Denise exactly which route to take to the hospital and which entrance to use. Her father had always said that preparation is the most honest form of hope. You prepare for things you believe are going to happen. You prepare for futures you intend to inhabit. She had prepared for this one with everything she had. She woke Denise with a knock on the guest room door, calm and steady. Denise was on her feet in 4 seconds. Maya had always suspected Denise slept in a state of readiness like a lifeguard, and within 12 minutes they were in the car, moving through the empty city toward the hospital, the night streets slick and quiet, and entirely indifferent to the fact that everything was about to change. "How far apart?" Denise asked, both hands on the wheel, eyes forward. 6 minutes, maybe 5 now. "Pain level?" "Real," Maya said, "but manageable." Denise nodded once. "Talk to me. Tell me something." Maya leaned her head back against the seat. "My father used to say that the 2 bravest things a person can do are leave something that isn't working and stay with something that is. He said most people get them backwards their whole lives." "He was right," Denise said. "He was always right," Maya said. "I'm just now finishing the list of all the things he was right about." She closed her eyes through a contraction, breathed through it, the way the instructor had taught her steady, in long out, give the pain somewhere to go. When it passed, she opened her eyes and looked at the city, moving past the window. She thought about James Richardson driving her to her first day of college in his old car, the one with the heating system that only worked on one side. She thought about him walking her through every hard choice she had ever faced, not by telling her what to do, but by asking the right questions until she found her own answer. She thought about a man who had carried $4 billion and a secret identity, and the grief of losing the woman he loved, and who had shown up every single day as a father, completely without reservation, without self-pity, without ever making his child feel like a burden instead of a gift. She thought, I want to be that for her. Not perfect, not omniscient, not the kind of parent who pretends the world doesn't have hard edges. Just present. Completely reliably, entirely present. Another contraction. Stronger. 3 minutes, she said. Denise accelerated. Naomi Grace Richardson was born at 5:41 in the morning. She arrived the way her grandfather had lived, without fanfare, without ceremony, with a quiet and absolute insistence on being exactly what she was. She was 7 pounds and 2 ounces, and she had Maya's hands long-fingered certain. And when the nurse placed her on Maya's chest, she opened her eyes immediately with an alertness that made the delivering doctor laugh and say she had never seen a newborn look so deliberately at the world. Maya looked at her daughter's face. She had expected to feel a great rushing wave of something, joy or awe, or the particular vertigo of a life-changing moment. What she actually felt was simpler and more complete than that. She felt recognized, like Naomi had looked up at her and said in whatever language exists between a mother and a child, before words, "There you are. I knew it was you." "Hi," Maya said. Her voice was wrecked and steady at the same time. "Hi, baby girl. I'm your mom. We've been waiting a long time to meet each other properly." Naomi made a sound that was not quite a cry, more of a declaration, a statement of presence. From the corner of the room, Denise made a sound that was absolutely a cry, quickly muffled by both hands. "I'm not crying," Denise announced. "I know," Maya said. "I have something in my eye." "Both of them. Both of them," Denise confirmed, and no one argued. Maya held her daughter and felt the room around her and thought about her father. She thought about him the way you think about someone whose absence has become a presence, not what was gone, but what remained, what had been left behind in her, what she would now pass forward. "Your grandfather's name was James," she told Naomi quietly, against the top of her head, against the impossible softness of new skin. "He was the best man I ever knew. He cleaned buildings for a living, and he was secretly the most powerful person in any room he walked into, and the reason he was powerful had nothing to do with money." She paused. "You're going to hear about him your whole life. You're going to get so tired of his stories. And then someday you'll be telling them to your own child, and you'll understand why I couldn't stop." Naomi's eyes were closing, going to sleep already trusting in the arms of the person she had chosen. Maya held her tighter. 2 floors down, her phone was in her bag. In that phone were 47 unread messages. Foundation board members, program directors, Theodore, Sandra, Victor, Kane, Claire Osei, a dozen journalists whose calls she was not returning. The world that the gala had opened was already in motion, already demanding, already trying to become her whole life if she let it. She was not going to let it. Not today. Today, there was only this. The divorce was finalized on a Tuesday, 11 weeks after the gala. Daniel called her with the news at 10 in the morning. Maya was in her home office, the second bedroom she'd converted bookshelves and a good desk, and Naomi's bassinet positioned where she could see it from her chair, reviewing the foundation's second quarter program reports while Naomi slept. "It's done," Daniel said, "signed by the judge 20 minutes ago. Legally, cleanly, completely done." Maya looked at the bassinet. At Naomi's sleeping face, the small fist curled beside her cheek. "Their final discovery attempt," she asked. "Yielded exactly what we told them it would yield," Daniel said. "They found the marital assets, which were divided per the prenuptial agreement. They found no access point to the Hartwell holdings, because no access point exists. Marcus's attorney submitted a final objection to the judge that was, I will say professionally, the legal equivalent of a man shaking his fist at a wall." A pause. The judge was not sympathetic. "How did Marcus take it?" Daniel was quiet for a moment. "His attorney communicated to our office that Mr. Richardson, a slight emphasis on the name on the ordinary smallness of it, was, quote, deeply disappointed by the outcome and intended to consult additional counsel." Another pause. "I don't anticipate additional counsel will be helpful to him." Maya thought about Marcus standing at the back of the gala room, the ground shifting under him, reaching for something solid and finding air. She thought about him going home that night and adding up everything he'd seen and arriving at an answer that was too large to hold. She felt nothing that resembled satisfaction. What she felt was quieter and more final than that. The feeling of a door closing on its own softly because it had simply come to the end of its swing. "Thank you, Daniel," she said, "for everything." "It was your father's work," Daniel said. "I just maintained the walls." She set down the phone and looked at her sleeping daughter and said very quietly, "It's over, Dad. That part's over." Naomi slept on unbothered, already past it. The foundation moved fast in the months that followed. Maya had taken her father's 60-day instructions seriously, 60 days of watching before moving, but the gala had reset the clock, and now she moved with the particular intention of someone who has been patient long enough and is ready to build. She and Claire expanded the workforce program to 3 additional cities. She funded a middle school scholarship pipeline in her father's old neighborhood, the one he had grown up in before the Hartwells, before everything, a detail she had found in the family history. Theodore had compiled a detail that had made her sit very still for a long time before she picked up the phone and called Claire and said, "I know where we're starting next. Audium im..." She hired, She asked questions. She read every program report herself, the way her father would have read them, not for the numbers, but for the stories behind the numbers, the individual lives that statistics can only gesture at. She visited sites. She sat with families. She listened. Victor Kane called her 3 months after the gala to tell her that 2 significant foundations had reached out wanting to partner with Richardson Hartwell. "You've gotten people's attention," he said. "The question now is which attention you want." "The kind that serves the mission," Maya said immediately. "Anyone whose interest is in the work, I'll take the meeting. Anyone whose interest is in the name or the number, decline politely." Victor was quiet for a moment. "You know what your father said the first time I tested him the same way? What did he say? Almost exactly that." A pause. "Almost word for word." She thought about that for a long time after she hung up. The idea that character transmitted carefully and consistently enough can replicate itself across a generation as precisely as genetics. That her father had passed something to her that was as specific as a fingerprint, that she would now pass it to Naomi. That was the real inheritance. Everything else was just numbers. Naomi was 3 months old when the letter arrived. Not email. An actual letter, handwritten in an envelope with a return address. Maya didn't recognize a law firm in Greenwich, Connecticut. She opened it at the kitchen table with her morning coffee, Naomi in the bouncy seat beside her, doing the serious, focused work of trying to understand her own hands. The letter was from a woman named Eleanor Hartwell, 81 years old, James Richardson's older sister. The one family member who had, according to the letter, spent 35 years trying to find him and never stopped looking, even after the private investigators came back empty. The letter was 3 pages handwritten in a careful, slightly trembling script that spoke of age but not diminishment. "I want you to know," Eleanor wrote, "that not everyone in this family agreed with what was done to your father. I was 26 when he left. I did not have the power to stop what happened, and I have spent 35 years living with that. I am not writing to ask for forgiveness. I am not writing to claim any part of what is rightfully yours. I am writing because your father was my brother, and I loved him, and because I read about the gala, and because I recognized our grandmother Eloise in every word of what you said, and because I thought you deserved to know that someone in this family has been keeping a candle lit for him for a very long time." Maya read the letter twice, sat with it. Naomi made a sound from the bouncy seat, a small questioning sound, the kind she made when she sensed a shift in the room. "It's okay," Maya told her. "It's good, actually." She read the last paragraph of the letter. "I am 81 years old, and I do not have a great deal of time to waste on anything that isn't true or important. Your father chose his life, and it was a good life, and he raised someone extraordinary. I would very much like to meet you if you are willing before I run out of time to do so. I am not asking to be part of your life. I am only asking for the chance to look at my brother's daughter and tell her face to face that he was loved, and that she is, by at least one old woman who has no right to claim her, but who does so anyway." Maya set the letter down. She looked at Naomi, who had found one of her own fingers, and was examining it with intense satisfaction. She thought about her father, the choice he had made, the life he had built, the walls he had drawn around himself and his daughter, to protect them from the Hartwell family's conditional love. She thought about those walls and the man who had built them, and the fact that he had also somehow managed to leave her without bitterness. He had not raised her to hate the family he'd left. He had simply never mentioned them. He had given her a clean start. What she did with that start was hers to decide. She picked up her phone, called Denise. "I need your honest opinion on something," she said. "Always," Denise said. Maya read her the letter. Silence on the other end. Then, "What does your gut say?" "My gut says she's telling the truth." "What does your head say?" "My head says be careful and move slowly." "What would your father say?" Maya closed her eyes, heard his voice immediately, the way she always did, when she asked the question the right way. He'd say judge people by what they do when it costs them something. She's 81 years old. Writing this letter costs her pride. That's not nothing. Denise was quiet for a moment. "Then you already know what you want to do." "I want to meet her," Maya said. "I want to take Naomi and meet her." "Okay," Denise said simply. "Then do that." She wrote back the same day. By hand, because the letter deserved a letter. She told Eleanor Hartwell that she would come to Greenwich in 3 weeks, that she would bring her daughter, and that she had no expectations and no agenda and no intention of making this harder than it needed to be. She told her that her father had never spoken bitterly of the family, that he had spoken rarely of them at all, and when he did, it was simply as people who had made a choice that led to a different life. She told her that she had been raised without hatred and intended to continue that way. She ended the letter. "My daughter's name is Naomi Grace. She has my father's hands. I think he would have liked you to see that." She sealed it, mailed it that afternoon the old-fashioned way, because some things deserve the weight of a real stamp. 3 weeks later, she drove to Greenwich with Naomi in the car seat behind her and Denise beside her, and she sat in the living room of an 81-year-old woman who had her father's eyes. The exact same eyes, the warm steadiness of them, the quality of seeing that she had always thought was uniquely his. And she watched Eleanor Hartwell look at Naomi Grace for the first time and begin to cry without making a sound, the way very old people cry when they have learned to feel things deeply and quietly. "She has James's hands," Eleanor said. She could barely get the words out. "I know," Maya said. "He would have loved that." Eleanor looked up at her, collected herself, sat straight in the way of someone who has been sitting straight their whole life, even when it was difficult. "He was a good boy," she said. "He was the best of us. I want you to know that. Whatever happened, he was the best of us." "I know," Maya said again. "He was the best of everything." They stayed for 2 hours. They had tea. Eleanor told stories. James at 16, James at 20, James the summer before everything changed, what he had been like as a young man, the particular way he laughed, his habit of asking questions that stayed with you for days. Maya sat and listened and received every story like something precious and irreplaceable, which it was. When she left, Eleanor held Naomi one more time, held her with the careful, absolute tenderness of someone who understands exactly what they're holding and exactly how temporary the holding is. "Come back," Eleanor said. To Maya, to Naomi, to the piece of her brother that had found its way back to her after 35 years. "We will," Maya said, and meant it. On the drive home, Naomi slept. Denise drove. Maya sat in the passenger seat and looked out the window at the January countryside and let everything she had lived through in the past 5 months move through her like weather, the grief and the betrayal and the revelation and the gala and the birth and the divorce and the letter and the old woman with her father's eyes. Let it all move through. She thought about Marcus somewhere in the city, whatever his life had become. She had not heard from him directly since the night of the gala. His lawyer had gone quiet after the divorce was finalized. He existed, she imagined, in the particular purgatory of a man who made a catastrophic miscalculation and has to live with the knowledge of it every day, not punished by anyone, just quietly, permanently informed by his own choices. She did not wish him harm. She did not wish him well. She simply did not think about him very much, which was its own kind of resolution. She thought about Isabel's phone call, the cracked voice, the apology. She had heard through Denise, who heard through someone at Marcus's firm, that Isabel had moved out 4 months after the gala, that Marcus was alone now, that he had started to understand in the slow, humbling way that certain kinds of understanding arrive, what the quiet, patient woman he had left in the rain had actually been worth. Too late is its own verdict. It doesn't require her to deliver it. Denise glanced over at her. "You okay?" "Yes," Maya said. And it was the simplest, most complete truth she had said in months. "What are you thinking about?" Maya looked out the window at the bare January trees, at the sky going pink at the horizon, at the world doing what it always does, continuing indifferent and beautiful and full of possibility for anyone willing to move through the hard parts and come out the other side. "I'm thinking about my father cleaning an office building at 2 a.m, she said, pushing a mop, thinking about his daughter, carrying everything he carried, and choosing every single day to show up as the best version of himself anyway. Denise was quiet. "I want to live like that," Maya said. "Not the sacrifice, not the secrecy, but the choosing. Every day choosing who you're going to be, regardless of what anyone else thinks they know about you." She looked back at Naomi in the rearview mirror, sleeping, certain, entirely at peace. "That's what I want to give her," Maya said. "Not the money, not the name, that." Denise reached over and took her hand, held it for a moment, let go. They drove the rest of the way home in the particular silence of two people who have said what needs to be said and are now simply present in the same space, which is its own rare and irreplaceable gift. That night, after Naomi was fed and sleeping, after Denise had gone to bed, after the apartment had settled into its nighttime quiet, Maya sat at her father's table with a cup of tea and opened the notebook she had been keeping since Tanya's words in the Eastside Community Center, the one where she wrote down everything she was learning, everything she intended to build, everything she wanted to remember. She turned to a new page. At the top, she wrote a single line, her father's words from the letter from the vault, from the voice she would hear for the rest of her life when she asked herself the right questions. She wrote, "Wealth is only as good as the character that guides it." She looked at it for a long moment. Then she closed the notebook, finished her tea, turned off the kitchen light, and went to check on her daughter. Naomi was sleeping on her back, arms flung wide in the absolute surrender of new life, with no idea yet of the world she had been born into, its cruelty and its grace, its betrayals and its reversals, the way justice sometimes moves so slowly you mistake it for absence and then arrives all at once quietly in the form of a woman in a midnight blue dress standing at a podium her father built. Maya stood over the bassinet and looked at her daughter for a long time. She thought about everything James Richardson had given her. The patience, the character, the quiet eye, the knowledge that real power doesn't announce itself, doesn't demand recognition, doesn't need to win every room. Real power builds something that lasts. Real power shows up. Real power chooses every single day to be exactly who it is. She reached down and adjusted Naomi's blanket, one small, unnecessary gesture, the kind of thing mothers do 1,000 times before the child is old enough to remember a single one of them. "Your grandfather won," she said softly. "He won before any of this started. He won the moment he decided who he was going to be and refused to let anyone take that from him." She tucked the edge of the blanket gently. "That's your inheritance, baby girl. The rest is just numbers." Naomi slept on warm and held and already in every way that mattered her grandfather's granddaughter, and Maya Richardson. Maya Hartwell straightened up, turned off the light, and walked forward into the life her father had spent 35 years quietly, patiently, and with extraordinary love building for her. She did not look back. There was nothing behind her worth looking at.